Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today's episode of Notion and Friends. This is our fourth episode in our series, and I'm going to introduce today's guest very shortly. But if you haven't checked out our previous three episodes of Notion and Friends, then honestly, what are you waiting for? You can learn how to use Notion as a product manager, how you can use it to create your own foodie recipe template, and how you can even use it to track your glucose levels. Three very different use cases. And today we're going to be learning a new and exciting way that you can use Notion in your work or personally. So I'm going to introduce today's guest, Sam Lee. He's going to introduce himself briefly. Welcome, Sam.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam. I'm a content creator based in Washington, D.C. I make all types of content, podcast, short, long form video, writings, etc. And I am a Notion ambassador since beginning of this year. And I'm really excited to show you guys one of the Notion Teamspaces that I use for the DC chapter of an organization called AI Collective. Basically, we host AI events, both large and small, and try to understand how AI is progressing, of course, at a national level, but specifically for the DC region as well. And that's what we're going to cover.
Awesome. I am super excited to see your template and see how you've created it. Before we dive into your template, I'm curious, since becoming a Notion ambassador, what has the experience been like for you?
It's been great. The community has been just surprisingly strong. I feel like when you join these type of tech or product communities, you always hope that people actually talk and engage and want to help you and you want to help them. But it's not always the case. So I've been just pleasantly surprised that we do have so many passionate Notion users from across the world, and many of whom we'll be able to see next month at the Notion conference. So that's been the biggest thing. I'm just surprised at how strong the community is, and I hope you have felt that way too.
I agree. I love the community aspect as a community person myself. So 100%. And I don't want to take any more of your time. So let's dive into your template for today. Please do tell us more about, what you've built in Notion.
Yeah, so this is the team space for the AI Collective's DC chapter. And in the chapter, I'm our director of knowledge management. So a lot of my tasks, at least internally, are related to making sure our Notion team space is alive and well. We could start up here with just the mission and vision. So our mission is to empower local communities through AI education events, sparking authentic connections, collaborations, and putting forth progress. And then to look more long term, what our vision is to be basically the go to place in DC where, if you want to understand what's happening with AI and technological progress, our events and our spaces are the place for you to be. Right after that, we have our core values, which are community engagement, cross sector dialogue, and educational impact, all pretty standard. And then something that I've started doing frequently with my Notion team spaces is I've realized that most people who are using these team spaces do not think about Notion as much as I do not use it nearly as much as I do. And that's probably a good thing. Even though we would love everyone to use Notion all the time, there's definitely benefit to not everyone losing their minds trying to make that last formula property work, for example. So happy to simplify things. And I think buttons have been just a huge game changer. I've talked about that on my own content. It's like the feature that I like to highlight to anybody who asks, like, why Notion as that marginal differentiator if they are on the fence switching from, let's say, just a different product. And as you can see with our third button here, we have an event page, which we use the most often. And with the properties here, it's just your typical date, event type. If it's like a workshop, ask me anything, training, etc. Status, description, and then last year at the Notion conference, they announced tiled layouts where you could customize them. So we have been taking advantage of that. These are important details, of course, attendance, location, registration link, but not necessarily ones that you need to see right when you open a page. So we really wanted to keep it as clean as possible. And if people needed to, of course, the information is always here, but not necessarily ones you need right away when you open a page. And then we have a lot of content that we put out, as we'll get into shortly. We have a Substack that can be turned into podcast episodes, blog posts, infographics. So similar mindset here with just making sure that we are keeping track of the content. All right. So let's dive a bit deeper now into said content. I like to always have the first view be what I need to focus on for that week. So there's no content for this week since we're recording it on a Saturday. So unless there's something I need to put out later today that I was unaware of, nothing's going to show up here. But that's why immediately after we have this your typical Notion calendar view that does connect to the Notion calendar app, if viewers are familiar with it. And I've been seeing more and more connections between Notion calendar within the actual Notion app and Notion calendar app, which has been great to see. Like there's a lot more functionality in terms of being able to edit from either side, which I really enjoyed. So just to give an example of what would look like, this is an upcoming live stream that we're doing with a startup about the White House's AI action plan they released last year. So as you can see, this is the episode details, information about the guest, and then how I'm going to prepare, which is reading his blog that talks already about the AI action plan. So going a little bit more in depth here, what I really enjoyed with content specifically on this Teamspace is the ability to create relations. So for those who might not know, property just makes your databases or has your databases talk to each other. So because I know that this podcast episode will focus a lot on the White House AI action plan, I clipped the actual article that we'll be diving into Notion and just created a relation. So this is where all of our knowledge is, and this is where all of our content is. This is a repeat guest for our podcast. So he has his own profile at this point, and as more episodes, we might have to like backlog a few of them. They would all show up in the relation as well. And then the last thing of note here is I made this formula for status. So as most Notion users know, we have a normal status property as shown here. But this allows when statuses are different stylings, or when, let me see this. Yeah, if publication dates are fluctuating, or if they're past, the status can like be ultimately just updated. My favorite is when the publication date has passed, but you haven't updated your manual status, so the message that should be published, which I think is just a helpful reminder sometimes, because sometimes it can just get annoying to update those statuses manually. It's just like a quick thing, but it can just get a little cumbersome. So that's been something that I've been around with. And then
very cool. I had a quick question.
Yeah,
because this is a template or a database that multiple people manage, how do you guys keep track of things, or does everyone have a specific role? Or because this is the first template we're going to be featuring where it's not just one person using it, so I'm curious, how do you manage it with multiple people being involved?
Yeah, it's a lot of quick and frequent communication. We have a Slack channel, and we just make sure that when people are editing, that if they have any questions, that they not only ask that question in the Slack channel, but they also the Notion page that they're working on. I will also say in different permissions for certain people. Not that we want to gatekeep necessarily, but that also helps, of course, with just making sure that each guest or member's permission is set at the appropriate level, so they don't accidentally delete something if they're not using the Notion space as much. So I think those two things keep us mostly in check, both like the communication aspect and just granting access or denying access, as harsh as that sounds.
It's not harsh, it's needed, because I can't imagine someone messing up. Okay, great, amazing, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And then just going a bit further for now, we have our knowledge here. I'm actually making like a Notion AI for Work course. So I've been experimenting with the feed view, and I really like how many things can fit into the feed view just on the is, I think initially, I mean, obviously calendar view is pretty small. Timeline view has its own benefits, and then like the table view as well. You just can't see as much at initial glance, which I've enjoyed. And then here's more about our team, and that is pretty much the homepage as a whole. The other thing I'd like to touch on briefly is I really enjoyed using the more agentic features of Notion AI. So in the corner here, I've pulled up Notion AI, and I've really say with how much it can do. I won't do anything right now for the sake of time, but basically, as Notion AI has taken on more agentic capabilities, it's not just an ask and answer situation anymore, but similar to, I'm sure people would be familiar with other AI models and their agentic capabilities. You can actually have Notion AI change properties and content and mass, and create content and mass. So it's definitely a balancing act, but I really enjoyed being able to get new ideas, or at least like refine my ideas, especially when deciding how many properties to make or which ones to make, how workflows should flow and which ones make the most sense. I've been using, I would say, Notion AI Agent pretty heavily on that regard. So that's been super helpful as well. This page is a little different from a normal Notion page because it's actually a wiki. So for Notion users who might not be super familiar, a wiki is basically a database within a database, and it's just supposed to be a more efficient way and better way to showcase your Notion information and just make it even more organized. So this is the first Teamspace where I've used wiki as intentionally, as you can see with each drop down, whether it's team meetings, events, it's all just there. And then as more things pop up, we will also add. But this has been helpful because I think it's a lot more intuitive versus like if we had several of these databases and we just have to keep going through them. And that's, I think, been a big way that I've been able to think about the pages because it's all here and it's really just like toggling. So you never feel like you have to go to like the sidebar, or you have to open up a bunch of sub pages. And yeah, I really enjoy that too. So I would say like the Notion AI agent and the wiki have been very helpful features as we continue to build this out. But yeah, I think that suffices. I would hope as a quick overview of this page.
Yeah, I actually love the wiki view. I've not used that yet. Really quick, how do you implement that in your Notion page?
Yeah, so it should be over here, and obviously mine's saying undo because it already is a wiki. But if let me see if I can just open up a separate, like I can just see here. Give me 1 second. Making sure this will happen the way I want it to. I think it also has to be an existing database potentially. That's why I'm not. Okay, perfect. I'm seeing it now. Okay, so this is like my personal Notion page. Yes, this is the blown up picture of me. It makes me so happy, so that's why it's there. And then here, if you if you click this button, turn it into wiki, basically if you keep going down this path, it will just automatically reformat your page into a wiki. And I won't do that now because not that I don't think I could undo it just in case it doesn't work, but it essentially will just, and then you'll end up with this instead.
Okay, because we have more time, I'd love to ask some additional questions about the template, and maybe you can also show us more specifically how you've used a few different Notion features in here. So love the template. I think it looks really cool. I noticed on your different views as well, you've used feed view, and within the feed view, I think you're able to reference databases or like different views within the feed view. Is that correct? Yeah, like here.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. How convenient is this if you are creating multiple posts in one feed? I haven't used this view yet, hence why I'm curious. Or is it just one big post?
On how much content is going to be within each view. I would say that like for meetings, it's nice because you can easily see if it's like an active workspace or not, just based on like the meeting dates. But I would say for like content, I intentionally haven't used a feed view yet because it wouldn't make sense with like how much content we do have here. So I think it's best used for like short, either like smaller content you can just click through like a feed, obviously, or like one big page that is just being updated within that page, like a meetings page, where you're not just going to keep getting meetings here, so you won't be clogging it up. But at the same time, you can still, like, at a very quick glance, see what this page is about and if you need to look into it right now.
Okay, yeah, which makes a lot of sense. And I guess for anyone watching who's new to Notion, FeedView is like a pretty recent update. So when it comes to these major updates that
Yeah.
Notion has and implementing them, what's your system been? Do you kind of just try things out, or because it's a pretty significant change? So I'm just curious, how do you implement all these new features when they come out?
Totally. Yeah, I definitely have to just try them out. That's a big part of it. I think
Yeah.
also something that I've learned with Notion just broadly is that not every feature is for you, and that's okay. I think it's like
Yeah.
super cool that we have so many different features, but I think the reason that I kept using Notion after initially like stopping for a little bit is because I just accepted that there are some aspects of Notion that I'll like peek my head into and be like, I'm good, this is cool, but not for me, and then just never think about it again. I won't say which features exactly, not that I could think of it right now, but yeah, I think it's just a lot of experimenting and then realizing that like if you're not resonating with a new feature at that time, it's probably best just to like leave it for a bit, because otherwise I think you can get dispirited. Like you might start thinking like, am I not using Notion to its full capabilities? Is it a me thing or is it a feature thing? And
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee it's like a feature thing, and it's okay. Like Notion's has so many different use cases as this
Yeah.
channel is showing, so that's how I feel about it.
I agree 100%. Every guest that I've had on here, I felt like, dang, I'm not really using Notion to its maximum
Right.
potential. But it doesn't matter because I think the whole idea of Notion is that you make it what you want it to be. So you use it
Exactly.
for what works best for you. So yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for also mentioning that. Another question that I think I've actually asked everyone who's been on this series is how long does it take you to build something like this? Obviously, it's an ongoing process, but for the first version,
Yeah.
how long did it take you?
Yeah, I've been lucky that I'm building more team spaces now. It used to kind of just
Yeah.
be me and my templates, and whoever were interested in that, they are happy to get it at notion.so/samhlee. But I think these days when I'm building something like this, probably I would say a week, like just to make a plan, toggle, and then I think the longest thing is always the databases. And again, Notion Agent has been helpful in just getting those first drafts of databases and not having to like recreate each single view each time. I think sometimes even with templates, and like let's say you duplicate a great template, it still takes a while to customize it to your liking. So yeah, I'd say within a week, try to just get it to a working condition, because at the end of the day, I think a pitfall for anybody who creates Notion products or content is that it's ultimately not what you think is best. It's what the audience you're serving or creating for thinks it's best. And for like my scenario, that's our team. Like if there's so many more properties I could add, something that can happen later on, as you mentioned, like in the working on it. But I would say initial setup, probably I try to limit it to a week so I don't overthink and just get like a working product, like an MVP, a minimum viable product, so we can start using it.
Yeah, a week makes sense, especially for something like this. What do you think is the most complicated part when it comes to building team spaces? Is it like a feature or whatever you can think of?
Most complicated part, I think two answers. First would be members or guests like familiarity with Notion, because it can just vary so widely. And I think some people just get it right away, and then others are just getting used to the product for the first ever time, and it can just be a lot. So I think like the adoption is something that can be a challenge, but in terms of the actual space, I think it's when formula properties don't work the way you expect them to, and you're trying to
Yeah.
like troubleshoot. I would say those are the most like buggy parts of it, because I think besides like when you want formulas or just any like automations to run, you can pretty much figure out immediately like what's going wrong if a status, like if this isn't published but it's actually supposed to be like in review, I'll just like change it, right? But if
Yeah.
it's showing up just automatically as like needs review, but I don't know why or anything, that takes a while. Yeah, right now I don't have any active automations on here. That probably will change at some point. But yeah, I would say
Yeah.
the more automation focus parts of the page is where it can get dicey sometimes.
Yeah, formulas are just so tricky and complicated, so it's a lot of troubleshooting, but it's also fun. It's like solving a math problem, so that makes
Really.
sense. Um, you mentioned
Hmm.
something that
Yeah.
reminded me of another question I had, which is when you are building a team space and the onboarding part of things, how do you go about that? I've seen templates where people have like videos within the template, like how to use, or like they have a separate page that kind of introduces the person
Yeah.
to the template, but curious how you approach it.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I've realized that the best way to do it is give just like the most important information generally to the team, and then like meet one on one pretty much with the team members, because I think at the end of the day, nobody opens a document and is like, great, it's longer than I expected, let me read all of it enthusiastically. So I think what I've learned is that as much as I want like every single thing into like how to navigate this setup, and to answer maybe the examples you were giving, I don't think I would make a video, at least at maybe like for specific use cases I would, but just make a Notion page or a doc. I think it's just making sure that if anybody was like, I don't know how, I don't think I can like use the basic functions of this page, that's like what I want the initial onboarding doc to cover. But anything beyond that, I think is something that I like to ask in one-on-ones, because at the end of the day, like what I think I've learned as I make team spaces is that some people use Notion to like just make a page and then leave, and like that's all they need to use it for. Others will use it a lot more intensively and update all the properties that they should, and use it like every day, for example. But I think it's more about just meeting every team member where they are, because I think in most situations, not everybody using a Notion in a team space is using it at the same frequency, and that's okay. I think that's a big adjustment to like people who use Google Drive or just other softwares on a more frequent basis. And of course, this is excluding like very, I would say, intense or high profile companies that like use Notion as a main project management tool. I think there are plenty of places that use Notion as like a partial tool. Like it's not their only thing that they use, even though I know that's usually the goal of Notion.
Yeah.
And we're working very hard on on doing that. But I
Yeah.
think that's the reality. And at the end of the day, even though enterprise customers are important, there's also plenty of people in that middle ground of jumping from just using Notion at an individual level to like maybe joining a team space for the first time, or using Notion with other people for the first time. And I think if I and other creators can make that experience great and super meaningful, then whenever these people, if they ever are at a bigger company or a different company that just uses Notion, they can become the Notion champions of
Yeah.
their company. And I think that people, at least who interact in my team spaces, have a really good experience, because who knows, like at some point they might go on to their Notion just primarily as the tool to manage all the company's information, and then they can become their company's Notion champions. But I think having a good team space experience, kind of that middle ground between just like using Notion individually and using it as your only company tool, I think is important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I guess another thing I'm curious about in that case is when you are building out these team spaces, do you have guidelines or specifications you receive from other people, or is it more on you to figure out how to build the space?
I far it's been more on me. I actually had like an exciting conversation last week with people who I might be able to help them. Like it might be a more collaborative effort to build that you're looking for. I think so far it's been me just having a simple enough plan based on what I know with like buttons, with formula properties, with views, and just creating something that I think will work. And I think something that I've accepted is that it just takes a balance of like what I want and what ultimately is the Notion team space for. Like at the bottom here, obviously there's some cleanup that we can make. Like this could be a whole database in and of itself, and it's like floating database here. I've learned to just let things be if they're not like essential to the structure or the content of the team space at the time. So I think it's also been great to see how other people use Notion, even though it's not how I would use it. Kind of like what you're saying with the previous guests as well. So I think that also is in my mind as I make team spaces that yes, I can think I know what people want, but ultimately people will tell or show you what they want. And it's
Yeah.
just your responsibility if you're, I think, like a good Notion creator or ambassador to like hear that and meld it into what people want. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sam, thank you so much for showing us your template and letting us in on the world of building team spaces. It sounds fun. It sounds cool. I kind of want to do it now. I just need to find the right people to get involved with. But thank you for sharing your
Totally.
template. Before we close
Of
things
course.
off, love to ask for people who are watching who are new to Notion, maybe have never used it before. How would you advise them to start using Notion?
Yeah, it's different for everybody. I think if somebody's never used Notion before, I would say talk to your local ambassador. We genuinely have ambassadors from around the world, and plenty of us have ways you can contact us online. For me specifically, if you just search up my creator profile on Notion templates, like all of my contact information is there. But I really think if you're just starting Notion, it's not super easy to understand how it's different from like a different note taking system or a different project management tool because there are so many out there. But I really think that the differentiator with Notion is how passionate the ambassador and user community truly is. And there's just so many people in our world that really care about making Notion experiences as good as possible for anybody who's interested. So I would just involve a human as quick as possible, even if it might seem weird at first to like reach out to somebody you potentially don't know. But I think I can speak for both of us that we're always, happy to talk about Notion with people who are interested, and there's plenty of us as well. So I would utilize the community. Yeah.
I agree. When I first got introduced to Notion, it was through an ambassador. At least I think the ambassador program
Mm-hmm.
existed at the time. And I don't think
Mm-hmm.
without that, I would have adapted to Notion as quickly because she literally spent an hour breaking down how to
Yeah.
use it for me. And that was super helpful. So if you can find
Yeah.
somebody to help you understand the platform initially, then I agree. That's the best way to do it. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Well, this concludes our session for today. Hopefully, you guys all enjoyed watching. I will share Sam's links, social media links, his creator profile in the description as well. If you want to connect with him and reach out, please do. But Sam, thank you again for joining. It was amazing to have you on and to
Thank
see your
you.
template. And yeah, thank you everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Elsa.